Hello, Jerry. Nice to have you here with me today. This is a very exciting day because we have just launched our 10th anniversary film festival program launch today, haven't we?
We have. I'm shattered.
I'd say so.
Absolutely wrecked.
Well, it's out there now. It's out there in the atmosphere, and everything has to happen now that you've put out. It's not just ideas anymore. Or
that's like, I'm not sure if I'm relieved or like more stressed by the fact that I've sort of like visually committed to doing events now.
You're not going to be able to relax until the last day.
Yeah.
Or the day
Come
after.
here to tell you. See, this last week, right? We've been working on our festival brochure for like a month. Obviously, all the program and stuff has been going on for months and months in the background. We built a trailer. It's up on YouTube. We did all the sort of background stuff and sent newsletters out and emailed our members and all that kind of stuff. And then on top of it all, we decided, sure, we'll just build a new website to present it all on as well.
As you do. Brand spanking new.
What are we thinking? Oh, yeah, but it's somehow all done. Like, it wasn't done until midnight, I think, this morning. So today is program launch day, so we're recording this a wee bit in advance. But like,
it looks amazing. It really, really does. And listeners, if you haven't checked it out yet, definitely go and have a look. Go and see what you want to go and see, what events you want to go to. Check it. Like, it's just brilliant. There's so much in it this year. Like, we're really making up for lost time with this year's festival, aren't we?
That's it. And I think we had to, in a way. Like, there was an onus on us to cover the 2 years worth of Irish films that we haven't been able to see in the cinema. So we've got a bigger than ever film program, a greatly expanded industry program, which is now its own kind of strand of the festival. We still got the awards ceremony. We still got all our normal socials and drinks events and stuff, and our family film. So I think we got 9 feature films, 19 short films, 10 industry events, our family screening, our award ceremony, and 5 days worth of, opportunities to come and hang out with people who love Irish film.
Wow, amazing. And all I will say as well is that I started volunteering for Irish Film London years ago when I moved over to London, and I was feeling a bit lost and kind of missed home and was kind of looking for a bit of a community. And now you're stuck with me. So, I mean, if that isn't the best outcome, I don't know what is. I got to meet so many amazing people, and obviously I saw some incredible films and got to see some great Q&As and everything. So it's definitely worth popping down to either a film, shorts, or some of the industry events as well. And you don't even necessarily, to be honest, like, the events are just so interesting in themselves. Like, even if you just have an interest in acting or directing or writing or anything like that, definitely do think about coming along.
Yeah, that's it, exactly. And look, that's probably the best review we could get from yourself,
You're welcome. Not biased at all. So our opening gala, which film is our opening gala and which is the closing gala?
Okay, so opening gala, Wednesday 17th of November at Riverside Studios, is Aract, which has just opened in Ireland to a really strong, healthy box office release. An Irish language film featuring Donal O'Healy in the lead role. Previously, Ireland's selection for the best foreign language film at the Oscars, and directed by a debut feature director, Tom Sullivan. That's a brilliant film. If you're listening to this podcast in Ireland, you may have already seen it in Ireland on its opening weekend. Hearing really great things from people who've gone to see that. I've loved that film since I've seen it earlier this year. It's a beautiful film. It's very highly cinematic, and it deals with its famine era content in a kind of a refreshing way that doesn't focus on the usual way to talk about that period of Irish history.
Yeah, absolutely. And then our closing gala
is a film called Deadly Cuts, which you might have heard about.
Mhm.
We saw Deadly Cuts at the Dublin International Film Festival earlier this year. Loved it. Really wanted it to be our closing gala all year. Spoke to the filmmakers about including it for months and months and months. And we were kind of excited to see that it got picked up for distribution in the meantime, and that it got a big release, sort of post-pandemic release when cinemas reopened in Ireland last month. We didn't know before we programmed it for our festival that it would be the highest grossing Irish film at the box office. Is that the right way to say that? Highest
Yeah.
grossing box office in Ireland this year. So we didn't know that before we booked it for London audiences to see. So that's really exciting. That's really cool to have.
And listeners, if you haven't yet, do go and check out the Deadly Cuts podcast. It was a lot of fun. I have all the ladies on. They're just brilliant. And there's some really funny stories in there.
It is
so
really
definitely go and listen to that if you haven't. So you have our opening gala, our closed gala. We can't go through the whole thing because we'd be here for ages.
No.
But we do have a children's screening as well. What did we pick? Something quite special for that?
Yes. So in the absence of like a really kind of big Irish film release for kids this year, we looked back in time a little bit and wanted to do something special. So we actually chose something from that I remember from my childhood. So we chose a film by Mike Newell called Into the West, which a lot of people will remember. It features Gabriel Byrne and Colin Meaney. And it's a story about two boys called Tito and Ossie who live in flats, and their grandfather, who's the storyteller, tells them about this ancient land called Tirnanog. And then a horse comes to see them, called Tirnanog, and the boys get sort of caught up in the fantasy of it all. They're also really into Wild West films. And when there's a bit of drama at the flats, the boys take off on Tirnanog, the horse, and they decide to go riding way out west and just try and find this promised land. And of course, their parents and everyone try to come and rescue them. It's a beautiful film that mixes Irish folklore and mythology with like this Wild West sort of Hollywood imagery. And it's loads of fun. Our normal like children's workshop activity around that as well, with a brilliant organization called Cabotar Arts. And that's all taking place at the Irish Cultural Centre. So if you want the family film experience, come down to the ICC that's on Sunday, the 21st of November.
Amazing. And then on top of that, on top of all of our fab shorts and other features that we have some great industry events, to name but a few. We have Funding Your Film, we have Irish Storytelling Today, Find a Producer, and then we have Directing Your Debut Feature, and then also Directing Actors as well. And that's only some of them. So just so jam-packed there, full of loads of events, and such a brilliant opportunity as well to network. Like if you're a creative in London and you want to meet like people like you, like Irish, English, it doesn't matter where, but like just to be in one space, to all have that common ground, this is definitely the place to
That's
be.
it. Every one of those sessions is an opportunity to meet new people, network, swap business cards if you still use business cards, and all the rest. And to come and hear from experts who, we might be talking about some topics which are specific to the Irish film industry or the Irish filmmaking experience, or whatever, like the experience of being an Irish person who makes films. But these industry sessions are designed to benefit everybody. So come on down and join us for them. They're very affordable sessions. And being there is more than just popping your head in. It should be a very nice experience for everyone.
Definitely.
One of those things that I really want to highlight actually is the last session in it, which is a session about working with archive. And it's a special one because it involves us working with an organization called Make Film History, which we've done sessions with before this year. But we've teamed up with them and Belfast Film Festival to do a joint event this year. At Belfast Film Festival in a couple of weeks' time, the results of an open call out that we've done with Make Film History will be revealed. So we've done a call out with them for non-commercial responses to the Make Film History archive, and we're going to select some filmmakers who put in a call for that to have access to the archives and to rework some of the archives to make a new film. And the results of that work are going to be shown at this special event. So it's a talk about how we can creatively use archive, but it's also a place where we're going to be showing of a film that's just been made for the festival. So I'm quite excited about that too.
That sounds so great. Oh, so great. There's so much stuff. But overall, we have tell everyone all of our different venues so everyone kind of knows where to look.
Right. So this is one thing that we do need to let people know about, because in previous years it's all been in one place and it's not in one place now. So the main festival hub is Riverside Studios in Hammersmith. Right next to Riverside Studios, just up the road, is a place called the Irish Cultural Centre, which is on Blacks Road in Hammersmith. Both of them are within about 5 minutes walk of each other and of Hammersmith tube station. So really easy to find. Saturday, our screenings are all at Bertha Dockhouse, and that's in Bloomsbury. It's actually nestled inside the Curzon Bloomsbury, so you can get to that really easily from Russell Square or from Euston or St Michael's or whatever. So that's a central London venue. In East London, there's a beautiful cinema called the Genesis in Mile End, and there's things happening over there as well. If you're a festival member, if you're a festival friend or festival champion, there's an award ceremony that takes place on Friday evening. That's at the Irish Embassy in Victoria. And not necessarily a venue, so to speak, but there's an online program that's taking place. You can access that via the festival website. It's irishfilmfestivallondon.com. Click on online program and it'll bring you through to the festival online hub, I guess. I don't really know what to call that. Yeah. And there's loads of extra stuff happening on there, including online exclusives.
Brilliant. That was the next thing I was going to ask, was that we have some stuff online as well. So, I mean, yes. Jam-packed. I think we've tried to cover as much as we can before this next interview. So this next interview is with Irish director Darragh Carey, who shot his debut feature film in London. So quite fitting for an Irish Film London podcast today.
Indeed.
This is A Brixton Tale. Enjoy. Thanks, Jerry.
Thanks, Niamh.
Hello, Darragh, and welcome to the Irish Film London podcast. It is a pleasure to have you on today. First of all, I just wanted to say congratulations on a really great film. It's also your debut feature film, which is amazing. It held me the whole way through, and I was so taken aback by some of the amazing performances. So before we get into the nitty and gritty of it, just a quick kind of brief for the listeners. So A Brixton Tale is about a wealthy YouTuber, Leah, who chooses shy youth Benji as her subject of her Brixton documentary. They fall for each other, but the desire for edgy footage leads them down a violent path. So just before we get into it, let's go back a little bit. So you co-directed this film. How did that kind of collaboration come about?
Well, it all started when we were in film school together. So myself, Rupert, the writer and producer, and Bertrand, my co-director, we all met in London Film School, and we made a number of, we all, we were good pals, and we were trying to shoot more and do a little bit less of the academic side of it and get used to making films instead of just writing screenplays that go nowhere. So we really wanted to just make some films. So we made a bunch of shorts. They were the worst shorts you ever will see, or hopefully never will see, because we're trying to make sure that they're destroyed, so no one will ever be able to see them.
But you learn everything on your feet and when you're doing it. So you gotta make a few bad ones to get the gems out.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we must have learned a lot because they were very, very, very bad. So then after making a few shorts, we were like, okay, well, maybe we'll be better at making features. So we decided we'd make a feature film right out of film school. And then we worked on the script for about a year and a half, and worked on research and going to the community in Brixton, and working with the guys there. Yeah. So then after that year of script development, we went into pre-production.
That's amazing, because usually sometimes that was kind of going to be my next question, was like what was the from script to screen, what was the process like? Because sometimes it can just take years. So I think it's amazing that you guys were just like, no, we're doing it, this is the time frame. And did COVID or anything like that like have any effect in that, or was it done prior? Or
Yeah, so I mean, COVID didn't really have that much of an effect because it took so long. So like we started on this in 2016, so
right.
we had shot it by the end of 2017, and then post took us almost a year to get everything sorted. And then we were submitting to festivals and trying to get distributors on board during the COVID period. So
Okay.
it affected us, but it
Yeah.
took ages. Like we had so many no's until Slamdance said yes. Like so many no's. It was very demoralizing.
And now look at this. But as I briefly mentioned at the beginning, like just some amazing performances in this film. So what was the casting process like? Because I imagine you wanted to keep the authenticity of Brixton and the talent that's in it and stuff.
Yeah, so we actually had kind of a dual system for casting. So for a bunch of the roles, we had our casting director, Lucy Rands, is one of the first people we got on board to get like a proper professional casting director. And she found a bunch of our cast. So for instance, that's where Ola came from, who plays Benji. That's where Leah, Lily Newmark came from. And that's obviously where Tilda, which is Jamie Winston, where they all came from. And Michael Maloney, amazing character actor, nicest man on the planet, who plays Leah's dad as well. So that's where we got those actors, and then a bunch of the other actors actually we knew from the estate, from Summer Leighton Estate in Brixton. So we met Dennis, who's our exec producer, who like helps get everyone on board from the estate. He's kind of like he's a big character there and everyone knows him. So he was the first person we got into contact. You'll recognize Dennis if you see him, because he plays one of the thugs from the rival estate. He had to step in last minute, in fact, because
wow,
our exec producer is acting the film.
He did a cameo in there.
Yeah, very good. So like he gave an incredible performance last minute. So Dennis and a bunch of the other guys from the estate, some of them were really interested in acting. So for instance, Dexter, who plays Darius, is from the estate. He's not a professional actor, or hopefully he will be very soon. Rose, who plays Benji's mother, is also from Summer Leighton Estate. She's the matriarch of Summer Leighton.
Beautiful, yeah.
She is beautiful, and she's just a great character all around. And a bunch of the other characters as well. A lot of the supporting cast were from Summer Leighton as well. So it was kind of half and half between experienced actors that we got through a casting agent or casting director, sorry, and then the other half of the cast was cast from the estate.
Amazing. And I think for me, Lily Newmark, who played Leah, so I found her so interesting because she kind of isn't your usual kind of stereotypical YouTuber or like vlogger, in the sense of being super perky and peppy and chatty and that kind of stuff. She really is a filmmaker in the sense of just documenting everything that happens around her, and probably actually her strongest creative skill would be editing in a way. But so what was it like kind of developing Leah? Was there kind of did she do kind of a lot of her own research, or was it kind of she fleshed it out quite a bit?
Yeah, so Leah's character changed a lot actually from the initial script until we shot. So and kind of came full circle a little bit. So we spent a lot of time trying to develop what kind of YouTuber or what kind of character Leah would be, what her motivations were for shooting this documentary. And as time went on, we wanted to leave a little bit more ambiguity there because it was just more interesting. And after we cast Lily, and she has such like an interesting, enigmatic kind of like expression, we wanted to put that into it. So I think a lot of Leah's character was on what we left out rather than what we put in order to leave a bit of intrigue and have it be like a little bit between, Rupert always described it as a fetish, between a fetish and like fascination, or something that was more defense mechanism to put the camera between her and the rest of the world. So that's a lot of the stuff we talked to Lily about, was what how she felt and what her psychology was going to be during the filming of this. And she described it as dissociating a little bit as it got throughout the film, is that she wasn't really thinking about her actions because she was just slightly just dissociating from the whole experience.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, the way that you develop the characters and the story, it leaves so much, you kind of get snippets of loads of different things within their life that you could nearly do a whole other film, you know, on diving deeper into the characters, but also it gives the audience, which I really love, it gives the audience then room or wiggle room to kind of make their own opinions or create their own maybe backstories or narratives for the characters. I loved the character Benji. What a beautiful performance by Ola, is it? I want to make sure I got that right. There's a slight kind of touch of an underdog story there, which, like, who doesn't love that? And you really want Benji to succeed and thrive and break out of the path that so many of his family and friends go down. But I guess the struggles that he comes up against with white privilege and, you know, like Leah's narrative and perception, and the divides caused by race and class and systems. Was that a story that you felt that was really important that you wanted to tell and kind of spur on conversations about? Like, I love going to a film and then, like, you know, going for a pint after and just talking about it for ages, you know, and that this is a film that you can really do that a bit with.
Yeah, I think that was something that we really wanted to get across, and we wanted to try and portray it in a way where it wasn't necessarily giving any easy answers, because there aren't any. So like there's with white privilege in particular, like we were very aware that we were the people who started the film, even though we got the community involved. We started the film as 3 white kids, you know what I mean? So how is it our license to tell this story? And we're like, okay, well, now we have a responsibility, now that we've started this ball rolling, like to make sure that it's done in collaboration with people from the community, and that it rings true, and that it's not creating a kind of a glossy, you know, action movie vibe or anything, or like that we're standing off the edges. Because that's one thing the guys from the estate said to us from very early on. They were like, the stuff you have in here is a little soft. Like this is not, our lives are a little bit, you know, have more peril in it than this on a daily basis. And you're like, people will not believe it if it seems like, you know, people from the estate are wandering around, because then it makes it to portray life on a housing estate in London like it's plain sailing all the time, and like there aren't all these challenges of like now the postcode wars is a big deal over there. It wasn't necessarily a few years ago, actually. That's relatively new. And the fact that you might have people come in and exploit the community, all that kind of stuff like that, they have to deal with that all the time, and it makes life much more complicated and makes choices much more complicated. So for instance, Darius, he's involved in crime and in gangs, and some of the people we worked with had been, and they got out of it eventually, but they were like, at the time, like, you see, you know, you see someone like getting turned down for a job at McDonald's one day, and then the next day someone offers you like a job where you can actually start supporting yourself and people you love. And it's like, it's not as simple, because they can't walk into one of Leah's internships in these fancy media companies, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the divide between initially it was a lot about class. That was in the first script. Then a lot of the other elements came in as we developed the script. So some of the things that happened, so for instance, the relationship with the police was something that was based on a real relationship that the guys had with this one police officer. So like this isn't an indictment of the police in any way in a general sense, but this guy was real. This guy used to do things like that, like drive them to the rival estate in order to get information out of them. Like it was a very antagonistic relation on both sides. So it was kind of personal, you know. Yeah. And then you have things like you have the cultural divide that is actually so incredibly close, like a proximity. So you'd have like in where the guys live in the barrier block in Brixton, right across the road, there's like a fancy ceviche restaurant that like only serves like minimum like £20 starters and it's right across the road because like that's what Brixton is a trendy area now for people from Hampshire to move to. So like it's quite it's all those things were stuff we couldn't avoid because it's so endemic in the area and it's just part of the lives of the people living there. So it's got a lot of texture. Yeah. So
I think that's why as well then the character Archie is really important as well. I thought he was so fantastic. Archie was played by Craig Middleborough, and like that. So like Benji's white friend, but also is you kind of just don't see that after the first second of the film because they're basically just brothers. And I nearly would have loved to see more of him as well because he's such a burst of energy into the piece, along with also being quite heartbreaking as well. But I wanted to ask, there's a lot of scenes where they're kind of just hanging out or they're in Benji's house and it just looks so comfortable. It actually feels quite, I know sometimes we're looking through Leah's lens, but also as well as a general it felt so comfortable and relaxed. So was that just a kind of a point the camera and shoot and let them kind of do their thing, or was it all scripted and marked out, and what was that kind of like?
Well, it's a combination. So I'm just trying to think of what we shot versus what actually ended up on screen, because we shot a lot more of that stuff that we had to cut out, and some of that was just because we lost some connective tissue because we ran out of money and there were some scenes that we had to drop. But so Archie and Benji, the first day where Anna and Craig, we asked them to go off and kind of have lunch together, and they started bonding on the very first day. They started chatting about their characters and working out like certain elements of backstory, so the fact that Archie's mom is a crackhead and like that he's kind of dealing with that, and that's part of his backstory. That's something that Ola and Craig worked out together. There was more in there, like, so there was more we'd love to put in, but it just didn't fit in the movie. So for instance, Craig in character as Archie wrote a rap to impress Darius. So Craig is a rapper, like he's a rapper and a producer and an actor and a magician. Like he's so like the character of Archie, only much smarter.
Wow, yeah. Wow, amazing.
Craig's a bit of a genius. So he does all of these things. So he was bringing them into the character, and there was just moments that we'd love to have put in, but they just like, it's just, you kind of start to break the narrative arc a little bit to once you come out of that. So there was a scene that we shot that we couldn't fit into the film where he was selling vitamin C to a bunch of people in the posh party, and telling them it was E, and they believed him because he was like, from ends, and then so their relationship was like really real. They got on immediately, like really good bond, and the rapport was amazing. But I think a lot of the scenes that they're together, they're actually scripted. They just make it so natural. The one exception would be like when they're in the soup kitchen and they're hanging around there. That's entirely improvised, that whole scene. And yeah, they did an amazing job.
Absolutely, their chemistry it was so great. I think it's the film is, I found it such a interesting take on identity, and especially at that age, like when you're a teenager, the stakes are just so high and everything just feels so heightened. And it's clear from the get-go that Benji isn't your kind of stereotypical product of his environment, but that Leah is kind of hell-bent on presenting him as that is obviously is so frustrating as a viewer. So there's kind of that anxiety just radiating kind of through the film. And in this case, the stakes do become really high because it does come down to their future in the world and kind of what path they go down. And I guess not wanting to give too much away, but like how slippery those slopes are, and especially when you're so young and impressionable, and you're really like Benji, really trying to go against the surroundings that he finds himself in. So I know you were saying there that you had people from the estate and the area and stuff like that. Did you have kind of many workshops or kind of chat to people that like would have gone down this way, or if they made this decision it could have ended up so different, and all of that kind of stuff to really flesh out the film and the characters?
Yeah, so a lot of stuff was like kind of borrowed and adapted from life. So for instance, Darius, who plays Dexter, that a lot of his character is based on like the character existed beforehand, but then once we started talking to Dexter, we started to mold it a little bit more around his experience. So he had been involved in crime when he was younger, and he kind of got a lot of respect from the community from being involved in crime and having gone to prison and having lived that life. So now he uses that same, and there's a hint of it, I think, in Darius's character. He uses that same clout as something to give him legitimacy as a mentor. So now he does lots of youth work, and he helps people in the community to stay out of crime and to take like maybe a more difficult but ultimately a better path. So he's doing a load of that right now. He's actually writing, I got to give it a plug, Dexter is now writing a film himself, based a little bit around his story. So it's a little bit like Darius, but for copyright reasons, obviously, it's not Darius. It's
of course. Oh, that's so exciting.
Dexter can remain the sole proprietor, I guess, of the IP. But yeah, so he's writing that now based on his experience of how a youth worker helped convince him to like leave, to stop, to get out of crime and to start a different path. So we talked to him. Like everyone on the estate has so many stories. Ola has loads of friends in his experience. So Ola lived a life very much like Benji's at the beginning of the film. So very, very protective mother, really straight-laced, like lived his life very much in a very focused way, where he was like, okay, well, I'm not going to get distracted by any of these. And it was easy because he had such a great role model in his mother. But a load of his friends, for instance, were either victims of crime or they were drawn into crime. He knows a lot of people who are in that kind of situation. So yeah, I mean, a lot of it is from life. So yeah,
I think I did find it quite scary how at times it kind of goes back to Leah, as you were saying, that she kind of found herself just being disconnected from what was happening, but how her character was so unaware of kind of what actions that may occur would affect Benji's life, and not necessarily hers. And I guess that I did find that a really interesting take on class difference, of just how sometimes it is that kind of ignorance is bliss, or that doesn't affect me. Like at the brilliant scene where the two of them are in the playground and the two policemen come up and she kind of answers back, because there just wouldn't be that thought of, how bad the repercussions might be, unlike Benji's. So I thought that was really, really interesting. And I think it really provokes a kind of formidable education in media manipulation, which is so current at the moment as well. So was that a theme that you really wanted people to kind of take away from the film and think about, like, not everything we read is always exactly the facts or black and white or that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's something we wanted from very early on, is that there's a whole world outside of the frame that we're given when we see a story of any kind, even if it's news, because we're used to, in our part of the world, we're used to fairly impartial news compared to some other places, like compared to America, say, but still, like, every story is one person's take on a story, including our history books, of course. So like as Irish people, our understanding and what we've learned from the British Empire is very different than my friends who grew up in and went to boarding schools, say, here in the UK. So it's very different. But also, I think it's something that fascinates me as a slightly older person, and the other lads, because they're kind of Luddites, like they're not really into the social media as much as most people that that would be in their 20s now. Is that you spend so much of your people, like now more than it never happened before, but now people are growing up from a very young, impressionable age of their development. They're growing up seeing themselves on camera, like reflected back. It's like narcissists, like completely manifested, so just looking into your own reflection, which is a curated reflection of yourself all the time, and then seeing other people like that. So you're like, all your relationships and everything is mediated through what is effectively like a curated image. It's the image rather than reality. It plays a huge part of this, a huge part in social media interactions, which are now replacing a lot of what would have traditionally been really like face-to-face social interactions. So I think you're always cutting out something. Everything's always edited in that case. And then I guess on a more, maybe a little bit more explicit example, Rupert saw a film when he was writing, when we were developing the script. He saw a documentary that was based on an estate, and it was about people who were involved in like gangs and, you know, like crime. And a bunch of people, they got them to, you know, to kind of like to express themselves and say everything like sorry, I'm fluffing my words here, sorry. So in this documentary, they got a bunch of the guys that were involved in gangs to tell their story and talk about all of the like really salacious stuff that, you know, that they were doing that was really juicy, I guess, for a documentary. Then a bunch of those guys, on the basis of that, got caught and went to prison. So it's like, yeah, like
oh my God.
of these actions, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's something that Rupert was like, once he'd seen this, he's like, oh, I like this has to be part of this film, because I mean, like the consequences for Leah are so different, and you can completely ignore, because all you're looking at is the screen. All you're looking at is the depiction on the screen. You're not thinking about what happens afterwards or before or around the edge of the frame.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like, I mean, I found it tough growing up anyway. So like you couldn't pay me to go back and do it again, especially now. I just think it's so tough for teenagers and young people at the moment, just with social media and, like as you said, just the pressures of it and the depictions and the narratives and all that kind of stuff, for sure. So I think that it's also a really important film in that sense for young people to see as well, of to just be wary and like, you know, be aware of how easily these things can happen. And like that's a whole new thing now that teenagers have to be aware of, that, you know, we had like I was one for a digital camera on a night out, I have to say, but then they never went anywhere. Do you know what I mean?
No, nowhere.
No. So no, I think that's it. I think that's a really interesting take on it. So you were saying there about that documentary that you saw. Did you as a filmmaker, like what would be your kind of inspirations or like work that you want to make, or, you know, like what's the next kind of step for you?
Yeah, well, I guess there's, I suppose to the first part are inspirations. So like for this film, a bunch of inspirations like played in. Now I'm not comparing us to any of these filmmakers. We're inspired by great filmmakers. We're not saying we're as good. We're just saying we were inspired by them. So there's like a lot of Krzysztof Kieślowski's movies, like in Decalogue. So there was a short film about love, which is about a guy who's like spying on one of his neighbors across the road, and the obsession that happens when he's spying between his apartment block and this woman that he gets an infatuation from. That was a big influence. Like Lynn Ramsey movies that are so incredibly subjective, and it's all like you feel like you're right inside someone's brain and someone's emotions in a Lynn Ramsey movie, and a tiny action can seem like it's like just going to make or break someone's world. It's amazing. Love that. Also, big fan of my God, my brain, I'm forgetting names. Andrea Arnold, big fan of Andrea Arnold. Like you know, so like Fish Tank, we watched a bunch of times before watching. Not like this is very much like Fish Tank, but you know, we watched a lot of it. I watched Celine Sciamma movies like Girlhood.
Oh yeah.
Love that movie. So we kind of, the end of the film was kind of slightly robbed from a cross between Girlhood and what Richard did. So you have Girlhood, you have this one shot of her face, and you can just say, like, I'm not going to give anything away in terms of plot, but you just see this one shot of her face, and it says so much about what's happened before and what's happening afterwards. And we kind of manipulated that in our version. Obviously, it's maybe a different tone in terms of an upending or downending. We'll leave it at that. And then the end of what Richard did, which I like, and then when I showed Bert, because he was like from Montreal, and what Richard did came out when he was quite young in Montreal, so he didn't see it at the time. And it's this. It leaves you with this question. So you're like, how do I feel about this? Like, I don't know whether I'm on his side, or I don't know whether I'm disgusted by him. And I think that this is a huge injustice. And you're kind of like, it just leaves a question. So that's what Lenny Abrahamson always does in his movies, right? Like he leaves them with a question rather than with a statement. And that's something that we really loved. And then in some of our aesthetic aesthetically. A lot of there's things we liked about like David Fincher movies, about the way he uses, and now it's a very different genre to a David Fincher movie, but the way he uses color in his films, you know, and the way he doesn't like to leave, he likes to have these really amber interiors. And we thought that kind of, if we used something like that, it would have that feeling of, you know, when you're a kid and you're out on the road and like you're drinking with your friends when you're a teenager and you're under this orange sodium vapor light from the street lights. And it's just this feeling like it's kind of like this heightened feeling where anything could happen and it's really spontaneous.
And you're freezing.
And you're freezing cold, but like emotionally, like it's a little bit like you're on fire, right? It's like you're lit by firelight running around. So we wanted to bring that into the movie and then kind of take that into our interiors as well. Like that feeling of like this big amber light where everything's like you're in a fire and anything could happen, you know? And then, sorry to answer the second part of your question. Mm-hmm. I hope that's a bit long-winded. Apologies.
No, not at all. I think everyone listening now, you need to go and check out all of those people to see the inspiration.
Yeah. And there's dozens more as well that I can't go into because then the podcast would be too long. So then what's next, right? So we have three of us working together in various different ways. So in some cases we're writing a script individually because we all write. So it's like someone's writing a script individually, and the other two, between myself, Bertrand Darragh, and Rupert Bainham, and then some of us were writing some films in pairs. So there's a lot of films coming up. Basically, the next film is going to be a little bit more genre-based for all of us, a little bit less of an element of social drama. Now, this obviously isn't social realism, but it's closer to it than maybe our next movie would be. I want to write a drag queen revenge thriller. I'm very excited about this because I already have the characters in my head. And it will cost a fortune, so it might take a while. And then a few other things. We're writing a film about a kid in a boarding school in the UK, like so very much like Hogwarts, which is kind of where Rupert went to school, and he kills his bully, and then he tries to get away with it, but at the same time he's trying to, like in Crime and Punishment, like Raskolnikov in Crime and Punishment, he's trying to deal with the existential crisis, even though he's 13, of like being a murderer and whether he can still be a good person. But meanwhile, no one in this school cares because they're trying to cover it up because they want to maintain their image.
Oh my God, that sounds fantastic. That's so exciting. That's really cool that you guys kind of, you have that, like your crew now of like, and I imagine you kind of shift between different roles and all that kind of stuff. I think it's so important, especially creatively, to like surround yourself by people who you have that shorthand with, or you know, who think like you or can challenge you, and that's great that you guys have that now.
For sure. I mean, it's really important to surround yourself with people who think it's realistic to make movies for a living. Like I wanted to do this since I was a kid, and I spent 12, I think, years working in advertising, which was amazing until I got to that point. And then it was only during the course of that I started meeting people who were making movies like for real. And a bunch of them now who were making commercials with me at the time are like really well-respected filmmakers now making incredible movies. So I was like, hey, well, this is real. This can happen.
Absolutely.
And then that's why I went to film school. It wasn't because like for, you know, it was to learn a lot about screenwriting and everything as well. But it was mostly to immerse myself in an environment where you meet people where you're like, oh, this is real. This could actually happen. Because as a creative, like working in a creative career, it can get very demoralizing when you're like, oh, maybe I should have gone into something a little bit more stable.
Why are we not accountants?
Exactly. I was deliberately not saying accountants because some of my friends are accountants. I don't want to get them offended.
I said it. Don't worry. I said it's fine. But accountants also need to watch films, so you know.
Oh, and my friends do. My accountant friends do watch movies, so that, you know, to be fair.
Exactly. We all have a role. We all have a role. But I do want to say, Darragh, congratulations on such a beautiful film, and I really hope that everyone does go and see it. And you know, we're allowed to go back to the cinema now. Go and see it on the big screen if you can. I know you were saying earlier it's out in cinemas around the UK, so definitely go and search it out. And then also there will be an Irish release, so keep an eye on our social media platforms. We'll plug it whenever that happens, hopefully very soon. And then also just keep up to date with everything that's going on with it. Definitely do visit brixtontale.com. And we wish you all the best with the journey of a Brixton tale, but also your future successes, which sound amazing. I can't wait to have you back on to talk about your drag queens and your high school bullies, or should I say bully murderers. And have a great weekend. Thank you so much, Darragh, for coming on to chat to me.
Thank you, Niamh. It's a pleasure.
And that's it from me here today. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you again to Darragh for coming on to chat to me. Don't forget to follow us on social media, especially to keep up to date with all of the excitement around the festival. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and YouTube. And if you enjoy our podcast and everything else we have for you guys, definitely consider becoming a member to support us and to get free access to a lot of great films and to attend exciting events, especially for the upcoming festival. A final thank you to the Irish Immigrant Support Programme and Culture Ireland, who've been brilliant supporters of ours for years. Gur Míle Maithagad. The Irish Film London podcast is produced by me, Niamh Brannigan, and our theme music is by Kevin MacLeod. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you very soon.